Yeah, all right. So you're listening to NYC Radio Live. I'm very excited to be with Cochemea. And this, the occasion is that WKCR asked me to come up with like a top 10 album list, which was kind of exciting. I have to admit, I was a little like unhip. My finger wasn't exactly in the pulse, but a good percentage of my hipness comes from Giancarlo Luigi. So he was my first call, and I'm like, hey man, what should I check out? And he hit me to a bunch of stuff, including your album, which will definitely be towards the top of that list because it's awesome, man. So I really dug it. Congrats on that. Seems like people are listening to it too. It's getting out there.
It's getting out there. Yeah, I've got it's been great response. I mean, this is the third volume of a. I mean, it's a trilogy. I didn't set out to make a trilogy in the beginning. It just kind of happened that way. But yeah, it's kind of it's a work that goes across albums.
Yeah. So I mean, I went through your the discography I could find, and you had that first album in 2010. That's more of like a funk. It's kind of like a funk album. And then these three come along, and it's like definitely more of a kind of more of a global vision you're picking up. I hear samba, I hear rumba boxes, I hear on this last one a little bit of a departure where you're doing some kind of almost more like psychedelic, minimalistic, trancey kind of interludes and stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe you could talk me through that evolution from that first album to this trilogy.
Sure. Well, excuse me. I think that even, going back to the first record, I did tease some things that would show up later. I've always been, I think that record, the first one, there was very, very rooted in groove, whatever that means to whoever's listening. But but it was like a very much of a product of the time that, although that record was recorded over many years, and that and the last three were just, the whole process is different. That was, I just kind of like tinkered away at it over several years of just like recording on my computer or recording on my tape machine and just getting friends to come in. There's like a lot of musicians that came in and would just, play little parts here and there or lend a bigger hand, so it was a lot of collaboration. And so, I had like some Latin funk, you might say, and but it was also like very like kind of leaning towards the soul kind of world at the same time. I was also like, playing a lot of like Fela's music around that time. So I think all those things, and playing with the Dap Kings. So I think all those things just kind of like worked their way into the music. And then I took a long break. I mean, I didn't record, I didn't make any quote unquote solo stuff for a while. And then but I wanted to. I was just didn't know what it was going to be. It was just kind of this sort of feeling I had, but I wasn't sure what the expression or form it was going to take. And then Bosco Man, Gabe Roth, he's been my main collaborator on all these the last three albums. We were just having a talk one day it was like one of the last Sharon Jones tours, and we're just in the back of the tour bus, and he was like, we should make a record. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. We kind of teased it for a while, but this time it felt like more serious. And he started playing me some music, and we started just throwing ideas around. And he was like, you should do a drum record. How about like drums and saxophone? And we just kind of riffed off that idea. And I had already written a couple songs that were kind of just waiting around. And then but the idea we had was like, why don't we do this? Let's not write any music. Let's just like assemble the cast, get into the studio, we'll book one day, and we'll just have a total freak out, and that'll be the record. And I was like, great, sounds awesome. So we, the first person I called was Elizabeth Pupo Walker. I'd been playing with her for years, back in the Zebulon days. We had a band, and she's just been she's a dear friend, but also just a monster musician. And then it just kind of grew from there. We're like, oh, well, let's get our friend Neil Ochoa, and let's get our friend, Reynaldo de Jesus. And then I was like, oh, well, how about Sunny Jane? And then the list grew and grew until we had the right personalities and the right, so it already felt very familial from the onset, because we'd all known each other, and there's so many, we were all just kind of knew each other, or if someone didn't know each other, there was a connection. And so when we finally got together in the studio, it was just like, hey, it just felt like a family gathering. And once, Elizabeth hit her drum, and I was just like, boom, it just felt like, oh, something's going to go down. It just already felt really special. And there was just so much laughing involved and fun. And but the process, that first day was almost 24-hour session. I mean, we would just stay until the sun came up, and we were just basically improvising. And then we would all just kind of work up an arrangement, and with Gabe producing. And we were just once we hit on something, and we just kind of, just arrange it really fast, cut it, and then move on. And that was All My Relations. And that was half the record came from that one day session. And then I sat with the music for a while, and then, I just thought, I just moved to Woodstock too, right around that time. I've been in New York City for about 15 years. So I was surrounded by nature. So I think that really influenced I ended up, writing a few more songs, and we did one more session. And that really informed, I think, the other songs that I brought in. And then that ended up being the record. And I wasn't really sure what, I wasn't really thinking beyond that record so much. I was just really enjoying that process. And then the concept, or the narrative, if you will, just kind of came together organically. It was just in the woods, and just, it felt like the overarching, feeling of the record was here are all these people that are family, and they're bringing all these different parts of themselves, and they're bringing all these different rhythms that all come from somewhere. And it just, to me, really just spoke to the interconnectivity of us all, and just that there is no separation, when it gets right down to it. We're all part of the same experience. And so All My Relations seemed like a fitting title. And then, when it came out, I think the response was so good, and I was just really, really happy to see how the music was received. And so I thought, well, let's just follow this up. Let's make another one, because it felt like the way it had come together, it felt like, well, I think there's more to this story. And so we followed it up, and I just thought, this feels like volume 2. I was really into the music of Gato Barbieri, his Latino America series. And there's a period there where he was separating them in chapters, chapter 1, chapter 2. And so I borrowed from that, and I was like, well, let's make this volume 2. And the second record felt a little more inward. It was more kind of focusing on oral history, family history, recontextualizing that history, blending history, imagining history. And that came out a little a year after COVID hit. So then it came around time to do volume 3, or I wanted to do a volume 3, because I felt like, well, this feels like I want to kind of see this through. We have All My Relations, we have volume 2. In volume 3, I wanted to kind of in a sense, All My Relations felt very couched in the present. And volume 2, in a sense, felt like it was looking back in a way, although in the present. And then volume 3, to me, I felt like I wanted to kind of look forward. And what is that like through the lens of a future ancestor? And so I constructed this sort of story, this narrative, and we got in the studio and made volume 3. It does have some, as you pointed out, there are some different palettes that we drew from, because one of the main things we thought was like, it's going to be another drum record, but how does it not be the same drum record? How can it be in the universe but not repeat ourselves? So we were conscious of that going in, but not to be so conscious that you're just going against something necessarily. But with that in mind, we brought in a few more different textures, a few more different sounds, and just with this idea of kind of like looking forward and through this particular perspective. But I think a lot of these records are very collaborative. So I think that, to your point, how did it evolve? It was a different kind of collaboration with these records. For one thing, they're all recorded live in the room, as opposed to what my first record was, which was very much a part of the kind of like chipping away process. These are like, come up with some ideas, we work them out together, we arrange them as a band, and then we cut them live in the studio where we're all in the same room. So I don't go in and overdub any of my parts, with the solos that you hear are the solos that happened. And we will do some editing here and there, but it's all from like a live performance, So I think that really kind of informs that part of the process, I think, is a big part of why the records sound the way they do also, besides the fact that, Bosco Man is behind the controls and dialing all the sounds. Yeah, but, everyone brings such a depth of knowledge of rhythms and sound and history, and all these things, they come together when we're in the studio working things out. And we do a lot of fine tuning, and there's a lot of intention that goes into the arrangements, because the drums to us are like melodies. They're not just drum parts. Everything has a sort of melodic, everything's kind of in conversation with each other,
Yeah, I think you kind of touched upon why your album kind of jumps out against other stuff that's happening, because like I heard some quote from Jimmy Page where he was like, man, we recorded like the fourth album in like 2 weeks, and like these other guys are spending a year making an album. Of course it gets stale, and I think the fact, especially on, you're saying that first of this trilogy, that you in 24 hours knocked out half the album. There's gonna be like a vitality and an energy and a humanity that can get lost when the process is not that. Right? It's like,
yeah. Well, there's a saying, it's a little bit like, a more traditional way of doing things, I would say, before, in the sense that like you work up an arrangement, you agree what that is, you go in, you cut it, and then you move on to the next thing, and you get what you get. So I think there's a few things that go into that, which is, one, you have to commit to something in the moment. You can't just keep going back and then keep tinkering and keep messing with it. No, I think I want to overdo that solo over. So there's a level of preparation that has to happen, and there's also a level of letting go that has to happen, because you have to just kind of, this is what it's going to be. And I think there's also just a rigorous kind of discipline that is involved when you have to just get the take. And we're recording to tape, so you don't you don't have the same kinds of tools at your disposal when it comes to kind of moving things around. It's like you and I think that level of commitment, I think, is really interesting, and I think maybe another layer of what informs the work. It's just like, you make these decisions quickly and then you move on.
Yeah, the sound itself, including the tape and probably the instruments, and as you're saying, that's its own, and that's across all your albums. They like, yeah, there's a lot of vitality. They breathe. They have a great, they're organic sounding. And yeah, I think you can't separate that, the actual just sound and approach, in the studio, or that's part of the whole package, and maybe even the message, right? It's like,
yeah, I think you're onto something there. Yeah, because they are because they are so collaborative, you know, and we all agree on what the thing's going to be before we get in there and cut it, you know. And I do think that that's why the records sound the way they do. You know, everyone is focused in the moment on one thing, you know. And also, I think that also, like, you can scale that down to how, like, the rhythms interact with each other, you know, like each part is, you know, there's a lot of like a call and response that's happening within the structure of the songs. You know, you hear one hit of a drum and then another one answers it. And also, like, I think in the mixing of it, which we talk about a lot, you know, in the mixing process, you know, you'll hear the field of sound is it's very panned. You know, you'll hear one thing on the left side and then it'll like echo over on the right side. But we also set each other up in the room to kind of mirror that in the beginning, you know. So one guy's over here and the other guy's over here, and then we're all kind of like, so we're seeing like boom, boom, you know, we're feeling it actually happen in the you know, while we're playing and cutting the song.
Yeah, I've had these like moments where I was like thinking maybe what doesn't even get recorded, or maybe what we're reacting to, it's not like you're recording sound, you're actually recording energy, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, man, because I think a lot of times, and I think about this, you know, like what you're putting into something, there's a transmission of the energy that you're putting down. So it could be like the words that you're saying or the music you're making or the performance. So I think about that when I'm playing, is to kind of, not to get super mystical, but just in a very matter of fact way, just like the energy that you're putting into the music, you know, if it will, whatever's inside will transmit outward, you know.
So I myself actually, I don't know, I also moved up to Woodstock actually a couple years back, and for me, I'm not sure its effect on my creative output. I mean, like I'm not like, I haven't yet been going out, and I've been going out to the woods every day, but I don't go out. I'm not sure like the effects of being in a major urban area with a dense population and all the effect of that, whether that was like more having like a greater or stronger effect on like some kind of creative output than watching a beautiful sunset and the you know, the birds fly by. So I mean, it sounded like for you it was beneficial, or is beneficial, or it's a mixed bag, or how does that work?
I think for me, it was like, it just felt like it was time, you know. And New York had been so good to me. I love New York. It's like my favorite city in the world. But I think it was just a confluence of events that were just, it was just like, it just, you know, the city for the longest time just fed me, you know, that the energy and just running into your friends all the time. And like, you know, there's a magic, of course, to New York. And it really, I fed off that for a long time. I just think that it was just that particular moment in my life, things that were happening. And it just felt like I just sort of started feeling this pull elsewhere. I mean, I felt an incredible pull when I moved to New York, and then I started feeling another kind of pull eventually. And so I've been kind of going up to the Woodstock area for a few years. A friend of mine had moved there at one point, several years before I had. And so I would go, you know, he'd get these get-togethers, and we'd go up there and hang out for a few days. And you know, of course, it's just beautiful up there, and I loved it. But I hadn't thought at that time like, oh, well, I want to do that. It was just like, oh, that's really nice. Good for him. But it eventually started to feel like, oh, maybe the pull started feeling stronger. So strong enough to where I was like, well, let's see what this is about, and start, you know, asking questions and going up there more, and eventually just start putting it out there that you know, it'd be nice, you know, just start asking people about places and stuff. And I'd kind of thought, well, you know, I didn't want to move there just to move there. You know, it felt like it had to feel like the right signal. You know, if the right place comes, if everything just sort of feels aligned, then, and then the right place, you know, this beautiful place in Woodstock just popped up, and it to a friend of a friend, and it just felt like this. It just felt like the right. It felt like the thing to do. It wasn't easy. I mean, leaving New York was a very, as I don't know how it was for you, but it was, you know, it was a big deal. And it's like you know, I felt so tied to New York, and had so many friends, and who were like family, you know, and so it was not an easy decision, but it was kind of like a leap of faith, you might say. I was just like, well, you know, this just feels right. Gonna see how it goes, you know, and I don't, you know, it turned out to be for me the right thing. It just once I got, you know, it took, I wouldn't say like it was immediate. It took a while, you know, going from the city to absolute quiet was a real, it took several months to sort of adjust to that, to just the quiet, and at night it's dark, and it was just like, what is going on? I think without knowing it, there's a comfort in being around a lot of people, even though the city's noisy and everything. There's a certain comfort in that, and so my body had to kind of adjust. But once it did, I just felt like, what I felt like it agreed to me at that moment in my life. And that's kind of how I see things. I think, at least at this point, you know, that things go in seasons, and, you know, I'm not ruling out that I would never come back to the city. I just think at that point in my life, it felt like the right thing. And that was 8 years ago. And as far as how it impacted me creatively, I didn't really have I don't remember, at least, having any expectations one way or the other about, oh, this is going to be great for my creativity. I just didn't. I just felt like this pull, you know. And I think, you know, just moving to the woods necessarily, at least for me, doesn't necessarily equal like, oh, it's going to be this massive creative thing. I think it just really depends on more factors than that. I think the environment is important, but it's also tuning into whatever that environment is, you know. And so I think for me, that's, you know, been something. I do love coming back and being able to slow down. And I think, looking back, I think it has, you know, had a very positive effect on my output. I do think that these 3 records are very informed by me living there. Maybe not like so directly, like, you know, but I do think it's, if I can like zoom out, I can see the effect it's had just on maybe the vibe of the records, or whatever, however you want to put it, you know.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, being a saxophone player, and like before we're talking about energy getting captured, and it's like, to me, those Coltrane records, like whatever, Love Supreme or whatever, it's like, that's like just like peak energy, peak performance. And it's like, it must be hard to be a saxophone player when like John Coltrane cast such a huge shadow. Like, is that like what do people do when it's like, you know, is there like this like temptation to like go in that direction, or like what would Coltrane do right now? Like, does that, I mean,
well, I can't speak for other saxophone players,
yeah,
but I think for me it was just like just kind of realizing there is only one Coltrane. There will never be another one. And I think for me, the one thing I always try to come back to, and maybe not always successfully, but it's the thing that keeps me going. When you play an instrument that's been taken to to those heights, you know, for me, like, virtuosity on the instrument is not my goal, you know. For me, it's just being honest, just trying to communicate some kind of feeling. I think technique is very important. Without it, if you can't play your instrument, you can't express what you want to express. So I think it's a never-ending pursuit of you know, being able to technically express. You know, I always can't not play the thing. But for me, it's a lot, you know, as I get older, honestly, I find myself wanting to strip away more You know, I find myself wanting to, I listen back to, some playing in the nights where I felt like I really used a lot of space. I really played a beautiful melodic line, or I really played off somebody else. I was really listening. Those are the things that actually make me feel like, oh, I did the thing that night, or I was really just like tuned in to what everyone else was doing, and we were all like on, vibrating together. Oftentimes, and I would say probably maybe 100% of the time, it's when I play less that I actually will enjoy listening back to what I'm doing, because I think I'm just trying to scale it back more and more and more. So to answer your question, like I think Coltrane as an artist, I mean, he's so many things, right? I mean, he broke so many barriers, not only technically, but just his compositions, the energy. It's just, I mean, he's just a complete artist, But I think, you can only be the best version of yourself. And I think that's what I strive for.
Yeah, I saw another artist that came up in some promotions was you were mentioning Yusef Lateef, who, like, I don't know what I feel like not enough could be said about that guy. Like, the breath of and all that. I mean, what did he do for you as discovering his music?
Well, kind of along those lines. I mean, I think there's a few things. I mean, just kind of broadly, his use of, he was one of the first jazz artists to really incorporate other instruments and other sounds from different parts of the world, and without making them feel like they didn't feel in any way, to me, gimmicky. I think they just felt like they were it just felt so seamless, and so true, the way he weaved all these elements into his music. And at the same time, he just play a blues, like just straight to your heart, I mean, he was also a virtuoso, but I really love Yusef Lateef's like use of space also, because like especially when he would play the oboe, it's just there's so much restraint in his playing and so much tone with his lines. He can play anything, but a lot of time he chooses to just play these kind of slower lines. There's this one tune I really love, it's called Plum Blossom, and it's just like this ostinato bass line that doesn't change the whole song, right. And he's playing flute, and the whole time he plays flute, it's just these very like short phrases, and he never plays fast the whole time. And I could just listen to that song over and over again for hours. It just soothes me, but also I just think that's an indication of just his musicality. And then, the next song on the record, I don't know what the next song on the record is, but he'd play like, Take the A Train and just like, burn a solo, through it. Or his work with Cannonball Adderley Sextet, But if you follow Yusef's work through the years, I mean, he really changed a lot too. I mean, it was still the same, but he evolved as an artist, I think, through all his records, and he recorded for over his whole career. I mean, I love his 70s records. The Doctor Is In and Out, and some of those records, are really cool. And some of his stuff he did with Les McCann. I think he's on Invitation to Openness. Do you know that record?
I don't know.
Super awesome record. But anyway, I really love that about Yusef Lateef, just his use of space, his tone, and he just being able to like just go between all these different kinds of modes and all these different kinds of music, but yet it all feel kind of like the same thing. There's a through line through everything. There's
one album that, if you haven't heard it, it's so similar to what you do. It's an Art Blakey album, and it's like all drums. And
I love that record. I love that record so much. Yeah, and in fact, that was I was listening to that record a lot when we were making Volume 2. There's a song we did called Tukaria, and Yusef was like his performance on that Blakey record is like was my touchstone for that particular song, because it's all drums, but there's a form. There's like a song form, and I really kind of stuck to that song form, and I played it very, like, I played it very kind of straight, you might say, but it's within all these drums, you know. And that's kind of what I liked, is like his playing is also just so lyrical, you know, and so rooted in tradition, at least to my ears, when I hear that record, you know, like it's like got all these like African drummers, and he's playing like what you would identify as like this kind of like swing, you know, coming from the jazz era, you know. It is just so cool. I love that record. I'm really glad you brought
it
that
might
up.
be called The Big Beat. I'm not sure.
I think that's what it's called. It's a red cover.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that album.
Yeah, it's in a way it's like, very much, like what you're doing is kind of like an extension of that kind of thing. With it's ridiculous too that how Art Blakey is able to incorporate, you know, all those, he's able to play all those African rhythms, you know, on the kit. It's like,
oh man,
yeah,
incredible. And I think Olatunji might be on that record.
He is, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to interview Yusuf once. That was one of my career highlights.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was only over the phone, but you got a sense of his true like humanity, where he's like, did you get that, David? Did you understand what I was saying?
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
like he was really trying to get something across. And I mean, that guy's vibe. I mean, I met him a couple times, and I mean, he is who he presents himself to be, I guess, you know. And I mean, it's just so interesting. His the song that hit me was like the sister song of the Plum Blossom, which was Morning, which I'm sure it's like the same kind of thing, dunk dunk, you know, as that, and and I remember listening to WBGO and then hearing that and being like what? Like, you know, just start dancing around the room. Like, what is this? You know?
Do you know this record he made in the 80s? I want to look it up, man, because I found it at this record store called Domino in New Orleans. Have you ever been there?
No.
Great record store.
Yeah.
It was called, oh gosh, man, I don't know what it's called. I'll have to tell you later, and my apologies to the
While
listener.
you're searching, I'll tell you one other thing that you said.
Okay.
You said to Adam Rudolph, who did a lot of work with him, and he said to Adam, and Adam told me about this several times, that he'd say, "See all those trees waving at him in the wind?" He said, "They're waving at you."
Oh man. Wow.
And I think he used to paint trees, because there's a thing in the Quran, like if you must paint trees. You know, you're not supposed to paint humans.
Wow. I would have loved to have met him. I'm not supposed to paint humans. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why all that Islamic art is like all those cool, you know, like different geometric shapes and stuff like that. They had to go in that direction.
Yeah.
You know? They couldn't do human representations.
Oh, wow. Huh. I found the record. It's called Hikima Creativity.
Huh.
I think it's him with these West African drummers.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it's all drums and him.
Wow. You know, he lived in Ghana for a while.
Yeah, so I think they are are, I think they're from Ghana.
Mm.
It was when, no, actually it's I'm sorry, they're Nigerian.
Okay.
He was yeah, but I recommend that record if you haven't. I'll send it to you anyway.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, so much to talk about.
I know.
Yeah. Well, how about, I didn't get into your biography at all. Like, so you came up through New York and you fell into the whole Dap King scene.
That's kind of an accurate way to put it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, they were looking for a sub, and I knew, like, I had known Neil Sugarman for several years already before I moved to New York. But actually I don't think it was through him. I can't remember who it was through, but someone got my number. They had tried to audition a bunch of people to play the baritone. I'd never played the baritone in my life. And Ian Henderson Smith, who is now with the Roots, incredible musician, saxophone player. Anyway, he was in the band at the time, and he called me and he said, "Hey, are you around? We're to possibly sub, but come audition, basically." And I loved the band. I was, I'd been following before it was Daptone, Desco. I was like, oh yeah, yeah, of course. And I didn't want to tell them that I had never played the baritone to jeopardize my chances, because I really wanted to play with them. So I just showed up. There was this broken baritone in the corner. And they're like, I was like, I don't have a baritone. They're like, just play that one. So I picked it up, and I was like, oh, wow. It was the first time I ever even touched one, honestly. And so they just had me learn some things and tested me to see if I could step. And then just called me a few days later. Next thing I knew, I was on a month-long tour with those guys. That was back in 2005. And then I just did a bunch of from there. I started kind of playing with every, a lot of people, and Antibalas, Budos Band, just kind of the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
Just started kind of like, ducking in and out of whenever someone needed a saxophone, one of those guys couldn't make it or something like that. And then eventually I just got in the band.
Yeah. Well, so 2005, they were already like a phenomenon, right? I mean, that they were like,
they were, but it hadn't. This was they were still playing clubs. It was still touring around in a van. It hadn't reached the heights yet, but there was definitely, like, it was like an if you know kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but they had been grinding probably at that point for 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was still like we would, I think the band was playing like I just remember a lot of little clubs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened what happened when it kind of like made it kind of like take off to get like a national recognition or internet?
Well, I think there was a big boost after Amy Winehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Dap Kings were the backing band on a good part of that. All the Mark Ronson produced songs on that album, and so that raised the profile quite a bit. And then I think it was just kind of a steady rise. I think those, like, around 2007, things started to really take off.
Yeah, and so you were backing up. You were in Amy Winehouse's backup band for that.
I did a tour with her, and I played a little bit on the record on Back to Black. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Sharon Jones as well. You were working with her.
Yeah.
That seemed like, from afar, she seemed like, that was just like a very sweet story, that she kind of late in life kind of hit so hard. And
yeah, I think she recorded her first record under her name when she was 40.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and really kind of was really like hitting her stride, maybe late 40s.
Yeah. And was it, I mean, was playing these big halls and playing behind these big names, how did that match up with your expectations of what it'd be like to play big halls and play with big names? Like,
Honestly, it just and this may sound strange, but it just felt kind of normal,
Mhm.
I mean, looking back on it, I mean, it's just wild. I mean, you know, we did these gigs with Prince, we got on stage with him, and we were like backing up, doing all these sessions. And after, it just started to feel kind of normal. It was just kind of like, that's what was happening, you know?
Yeah.
um, so, I mean, and I think at the time too, the focus was, I mean, there was a lot of outside work, because once people became aware, there a lot of people wanted that sound, so they would, come to, want the band to play on their records or get the horn section or whatever it was. But the focus largely was really on the band,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a great time. I mean, I've never, it was a singular experience, I've when the band was really cooking and really on, and the synergy between the band and Sharon, I've never experienced anything like that since, or before. I've had many great experiences musically that were great in their own way. They were different. But there was just something very special there.
Yeah. 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 Some of that stuff is just cooking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Talk about energy.
Right. So, I'm always thankful for lack of major uh accolades in my own life, because if I'm around a lot of people and if I'm around somebody and they're like, "Oh my God, you are just a genius," I'm like, "Boy, this person has excellent judgment," you know? So, I mean,
I like you.
so, so like, how did that, like, I mean, what did you have to, like, kind of be cautious with, like, ego inflation and all that kind of stuff going on when you're playing to 10,000 plus people or whatever it is, like.
Yeah, I mean, at least for me, I think, like, I had worked, um, I've been a professional musician for most of my life. So, before, I had just been playing in one context or another for a really long time. And I think there is always a danger of, I've observed with myself, also with other people, but where it can go to your head, and but I do think that, you know, things can change really quick, and I
Hmm.
think it's really important to just be cool with everybody, no matter who they are, whether they're the person that's moving the gear, the person that's doing the sound, the person that's, anyone, anywhere that you encounter. I think it's really important just to be a good person, because I think it's just the right thing to do, but also I think you never know which way life's going to take you. And I think just the nature of things, it's like you have your ups and you have your downs, and
Yeah.
invariably you're going to see some people maybe you weren't so cool to on the way down. um,
Yeah, what's that Alan Toussaint song? It says exactly that. Do you know it?
no.
Views on the way up are the same something on
Yeah.
the way down. Yeah, it's something like
Yeah.
that. Remember you on the way down.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's true. And it's so silly, actually, because it's like I've had in the same week both being like the usher taking the person to the VIP and being the VIP person being taken by an usher. It's so silly.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? Because I think about that too. It's like still like you could be in like this really privileged place, but at the same time, there's levels to shit.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I don't know if I like reading these producers' books, and Bill Graham, you know, kind of invented the modern rock concert. Like he was working with everybody putting together that like USA for Africa thing, and I think that's what it was. And or maybe it was some huge fundraising thing, and everybody was involved, but like, you know, all the big names at the time, the Cyndi Laupers and the whoever else. And he was like, we need some meat. You're all vegetables. Like, we need Bruce Springsteen, you know, and these famous, you know, huge artists were like, did he just call us vegetables? You know,
wow.
But yeah,
I wonder who he in his eyes were the vegetables.
It's in the book, which is an amazing book, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, you know, they were all like top 10 artists, you know, but they weren't Bruce Springsteen in 1984 or whatever it was, you know.
Yeah.
So there's levels.
There's levels, man.
Yeah.
Did you see the Springsteen movie?
No. Is it worth it?
Well, one of my friends says it is. It focuses on the whole time he was making that record in Nebraska.
Okay.
So it's not which is like an off record. It's like he made it on a 4-track, and he was listening to the band Suicide a lot.
Huh.
And which is a band that I love, and I feel like it's so odd. Like you wouldn't normally think that those two things would go together. Yeah. Anyway, just an aside, but
interesting. Yeah,
I'll let you know if I see it.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of the biopics, the Dylan or the anything. They've been coming out like crazy. The Queen,
man. I know. People, I love a biopic even when it's terrible.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why. I think I just like those are like the only kind of popcorn movies I feel like I can really get behind, even when they're bad.
Well, that's a revealing insight.
Maybe it is. Like, give me the dirt.
Yeah. So my wife is like much more. She's like much more sensitive to the world, and she notices like maybe 90% more data than I do, and she can. I don't know. Sometimes she I don't know. It's not even just in the past. She'll tell you, you know, you have to watch what you think around her. It's terrible. But she was saying, like, when we saw you play in downtown Manhattan. I forgot the occasion, but and
Drum,
that's right. And she was saying, like, this guy, he really brings something. Like, and she really, you know, and she doesn't say that often, and she's very musically hip, extremely. So she felt like you're invoking something when you play. I don't know if those are the terms you think about it in, or if it's an intention, or you know, like, how are you, you know, what's your aim, or what, you know, are you trying to, like, is that a goal?
I think my goal when I play is you know, is just my highest goal when I play is just to be a channel, and that's it. You know, and it's and to get out of the way. And I think that when spirit comes through, I just let it happen. I heard Sonny Rollins once say, I don't go to the music, I let the music come to me. And that's something that I try and keep in mind, you know. And I think there's varying degrees of things that happen. When on a great night, I kind of won't remember the night. It will have been just like kind of I was open, and I was. It's almost like the instrument plays you. And those are rare. Those are rare nights, I will say, for me anyway. But I've had them, and that to me is the goal. And I think when that happens, it's like it's almost like the effort. You're stripping yourself of the effort and the striving and the trying to do a good job, or the trying to communicate something, anything. It's just what it is, it's just the music, and the music just flows. It just happens, so that to me is the highest ultimate goal when I get on the stage, to play the music. And it's even that way, I think, when I'm writing the stuff, these are just things that come to me, and I try not to get too deep into it, just because it's mysterious, and I want to keep it that way. It's not for me to know everything, but there's something there, and I just try to be faithful to whatever that is. Yeah, and like I said, there's varying degrees of that, I would say most of the time it's kind of going in and out of that sort of consciousness. When I play, there'll be moments where it's like, now I feel like I'm there, and then it'll kind of, there's this sort of ebb and flow, but the goal is to kind of just be there.
Right. I mean,
that makes sense. Did you get that, David?
The very thought that, I'm there. That's like that could break the spell, even, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. It's almost like only afterwards you realize, oh yeah, because then you're just like, oh shit. Yeah. So yes, it's that no thinking thing, like just trying not to, but it's a funny sort of dichotomy, because in a way it's like Eddie Harris, who is one of my favorite saxophone players, and such a complete artist in my opinion. He would always say he likes to think before he plays, because he likes to think of an idea, a motif, and then he likes to go and play it. So I think there isn't any one way to do it. Just like acting, there isn't one school of acting. I think I kind of feel that way about music. That's just what I've experienced in terms of when I felt like the thing did what I even hesitate to say what it was supposed to do, but I will say this. Someone asked me this recently. What do you hope people get out of out of the music? And I think I just hope that people feel something. That the music communicates a feeling, and it doesn't need to necessarily have the meaning, whatever I think the story is, or the music is, or whatever. It just is, and whatever someone takes away from it, if it's a good feeling, or if it makes them think, or if it makes them sets them off on some, reminds them of something, or whatever it is, I just hope that it's a pathway to feeling something, and that we might all feel something together. I think that's a beautiful thing, when we're all just vibrating together, we're all feeling something together. That's a special thing, and it can only happen there.
Yeah, and maybe when the nucleus of it is that you guys are creating it all together in the moment, and that's how the genesis of it, that might create the conditions for the audience as well to connect, in a way that improvised music, I think it might be able to connect with people in a different manner than not completely pre-written stuff.
Well, and there's a sort of symbiosis that happens, because you play, and the crowd, you start to feel something from the crowd, and that becomes this exchange and this energetic sort of back and forth, and then everyone's kind of sort of in this field together.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Congrats. It was a great album.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Top of a handful of great albums. So yeah, thanks for your body of work, and exciting to hear what's coming next.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you up in the woods.
Yeah, man.